You know, when you have a show about gratitude, you've got to be grateful for your sponsors. And in our life of gratitude, you know, we all have guides. Somebody that guided us through our lives, that made us appreciate those things that we have. And that's why I'm so delighted and so grateful for our sponsor, Life Guides. Life Guides is a peer-to-peer community that helps people navigate through their day-to-day stressors by providing a place of empathy, listening, wisdom, and support with a guide who has walked in your shoes, experiencing the same challenge or life experience as you. A true life guide. And because you're listening to our gratitude podcast, if you go to their website, lifeguides.com/schedule a demo and add the code HEALTHY2021. The code is HEALTHY2021 in the free text box. You'll get 2 months of their services for free. 2 months for free. So sign up, show your team you care, get a life guide, be grateful for those guides in your life, as I am grateful for our sponsor, Life Guides. Welcome to the Leading with Gratitude podcast. I'm your host, Chester Elton, the Apostle of Appreciation. In the next 30 minutes, we hope that we'll give you some information, some tools, in ways that you can live a more grateful life. People that are grateful have deeper relationships, sleep better, and just have better overall lives. And that's what we hope for you. Hey, welcome to Leading with Gratitude Live. I'm your host, Chester Elton, the Apostle of Appreciation. This is 30 minutes of information, inspiration, and your own personal roadmap to develop a culture of gratitude at work and at home. And it's all brought to you on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube by the amazing people at the Methods Network. Well, today our guest is retired Colonel from the United States Air Force, Nicole Malachowski. Let me tell you a little bit about her because she is beyond amazing. She's a USAF veteran and engaging speaker. Nicole Malachowski defies stereotypes. She's much more than a former jet fighter pilot. Nicole is a leader, the first woman pilot on the Thunderbirds. How cool is that? A White House fellow. After a devastating illness, leaving her unable to walk and speak for 9 months, she fought back and prevailed. Today, she inspires audiences all over the world to go beyond resilience and become resurgent. I've been able to spend a little bit of time with Nicole, and she is amazing. First off, Nicole, thank you so much for your service, for your indomitable spirit, for your resilience. Welcome to Leading with Gratitude.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Chester. It's a delight to be here.
You know, it's so fun. Just in the few minutes that we've spent together, I can just feel of your goodness and your spirit. Thank you so much for your service. And for those of you that are listening out there and want to book a speaker, she is virtual or live. She is remarkable. So let me get that commercial out of the way right away. Listen, your story is so interesting to me because you have so many different stories to tell. Tell me a little bit about your personal story of resilience, and specifically the phrase yield to overcome.
Yeah, sure. When I think about resilience and this idea of yield to overcome, it goes back to the story of the severe illness that I endured. I had been a fighter pilot in the Air Force for a long time, which meant, you had to be physically fit and mentally fit and emotionally fit. And in July of 2012, I started coming down with this kind of mysterious illness. And at the time, I was actually the commander of the 333rd Fighter Squadron. And the illness felt a little bit, like the flu. I ended up not being able to fly aircraft. I had to ground myself. I went to the doctor. And the doctors really couldn't figure out exactly what was wrong with me. Within about 3 months, I started enduring neurological issues. So I started having pins and needles and numbness. I had short-term memory problems, coordination problems with my hand and with my right leg. And so at this point, doctors grew concerned. Interestingly, this illness would go on undiagnosed for about 4 years. So I would see a lot of doctors, endure a lot of tests, and my symptoms would wax and wane. And in fact, over time, the symptoms would increase in severity, and they would also increase in number. Until August of 2016, so it had been about 4 years that I'd been with this mysterious illness. In August of 2016, I woke up at my home And I was literally unable to open my mouth to speak or to move. It was a temporary paralysis, but as you can imagine, it was distinctly frightening. And it was at that time that the doctors diagnosed me with late stage neurological tick-borne illness. So here's this fighter pilot with this career, who's physically and mentally fit, who became completely broken and dependent on other people because of a simple tick bite. And during that time, unfortunately, I would have to be medically retired from the United States Air Force. And I remember the day of my medical retirement going, how did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? I had this amazing career. Now I've lost everything, my identity, my career as a fighter pilot and an officer, my income, the way I provided for my family. And I said, I can't really read or write. I can't work full time. Who's going to hire me? And I had this pity party. Then I had this kind of aha moment after about day 3, and these words came into my head. And the words were yield to overcome. Yield to overcome meant to me, it wasn't about quitting or surrendering or giving up. Yielding meant, Nicole, you need to accept where you're at, the fullness of the situation. You didn't want this illness. You didn't expect this to happen to you, but what are you going to do now? All along, I had been asking myself the wrong question, right? What is it I can't do? There's all these things I can't do now because of my illness. But yield to overcome got me to kind of reframe that. The real question is, what is it you can do, Nicole? What is it you can do to move forward? I had regained my ability to speak. I needed to be with people. I had stories to share. And so whenever I come across these moments in my life, kind of like dealing with coronavirus, like, why is this happening? Why now? I realize yield to overcome helps me accept the situation and move forward.
That's remarkable. It's so interesting that this is a pandemic. This is all over the world. And that principle that you just stated is a universal principle, right? There's people in countries all over the world dealing with this. In fact, it's really fun. We have quite an international audience. We've got people joining us today from Mozambique and from Sweden and Scotland and Peru and Colombia, Virginia, Ghana. With any kind of luck, somebody from Buffalo, which I know is you're a Buffalo Bills fan. Now, people are wondering why I'm wearing a Jets cap. I thought, well, she's a jet fighter pilot. I thought this would be appropriate. And then she tells me she's a Bills fan. It's completely inappropriate for me to wear this cap. Well, listen, as we start to talk about resilience, we want to take your questions. And so let's flash to our command question control center, Justin Levere. He's going to be taking your questions in his ninja outfit there. There we go. So post your questions in the chat area. Yeah, that would be really frightening. So put your questions in there because, this is a rare opportunity to talk to the first female jet fighter pilot to fly with the Thunderbirds. Talk to us a little bit about achieving that level of success and what it meant for you, just not as a pilot, but also as a woman.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an honor for anybody to be selected to be on the Thunderbird team. It is a very unique and a small team, and over time, there's just been very few alumni. So it's really an honor and a responsibility. And I think it's important for your viewers to realize that the Thunderbird team is so much more than just the 6 jets you see flying at that air show. I mean, we, at the time I was on the team, had over 125 people from 25 different career fields required to come together to make that unique mission happen. I used to tell people I'd work really hard for 30 minutes out of the day flying the air show, which I did, but the other 23 hours and 30 minutes out of the day, there was 125 people making it happen. And all it took was one person, just one, not doing their job to the fullness of their capability, right? And that wonderful, beautiful mission wouldn't happen. And so for us on the Thunderbird team, past, present, and future Thunderbirds, it's just an honor, a huge responsibility, because it's our job to represent, recruit, and retain the next generation of Air Force airmen.
That is so cool. You talk about when you're going through crisis and when you're going through stuff like that, you say to ask the right questions. I think that's really interesting. I think people are they're sheltering, they're trying to figure this out, and perhaps they aren't asking the right questions. What do you mean by that, Nicole?
When I mean asking the right questions, I think what I'm really getting at is what is actually in your toolkit. What are the things you actually have full and complete control over? I think oftentimes we can get distracted by the noise and start asking questions about things that literally we don't have any influence over, or that we literally don't have any control over. So asking the right question is, what exactly can I do? What do I have resource-wise available to me that can actually make a difference? Because right now in a crisis, the last thing we need to be doing is extraneous stuff. The last thing we need is to be distracted by things that aren't a true priority. The last thing we need to do is to waste a precious energy and time on things that we literally can't move the ball on. So what can you move the ball on?
Really, really interesting. Now, in our pre-show conversation, you used this acronym that I want you to explain to the audience. It's TPIO. I think I got that right. And the lesson you learned from TPIO. So go for it. And then, by the way, after we want to interact with you, ask some questions. I know you've got some questions about Nicole. So TPIO, go.
Sure, absolutely, Chester. So the actual acronym is PIO, and it stands for Pilot Induced Oscillation. So I kind of liken this coronavirus that we're all having to endure, this crisis, to turbulence when I fly as a pilot. And during training season, when I was a Thunderbird, it took me a long time to learn how to fly in stable air 3 feet away from each other. But I'll never forget the first time during training season where we actually encountered physical turbulence. And as we flew that aircraft in the formation into turbulence, the second I felt it, my instinct was to squeeze the stick harder, to counteract each and every little bump along the way. But what happens when you do that is each counteraction has to get bigger and bigger until you get into this PIO, a pilot-induced oscillation. I can assure you it makes for a very ugly air show. It's terribly inefficient, and it can be downright dangerous. But I liken it to just us as human beings when the unexpected or change comes along, turbulence in our lives. Isn't it our natural reaction to try to control it or to counteract it and force it, even though we have no control over it? So when we landed from that sortie that day, where I was all over the place trying to figure out how to fly stable in turbulence, one of the instructors on the team, he looked at me, he said, "Nicole, why were you flying all over the place?" I said, "Didn't you feel that turbulence? I was trying the best I could to fight to stay in position." And he said, "Oh, we forgot to tell you the secret. Would you like to know the secret?" I was like, "Yeah, Steve, information I could have used yesterday. I'd like to know the secret." And he said, "The secret to staying in formation, in your position, in your formation for whatever maneuver we're doing, we promise each other as a team, no matter what role we're fulfilling, that when we encounter turbulence, we will loosen our grip." Loosen your grip.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, the exact opposite of my instinct as a pilot and our instinct as human beings. So the next day when I went out and flew and we encountered turbulence again, I thought, loosen your grip, Nicole. That's what Steve said, and he's the Yoda of the team. So I let go with 1, 2, 3 fingers, and guess what happened? I stayed in position. Everybody did. The formation stayed together, and we exited the team, the turbulence, if you will, intact as a team, just because we all decided to loosen our grip. It's an interesting analogy.
Yeah, just relax, take a breath. I think that's such great advice, particularly for now, because we want to control everything. We want to control our kids, learning online. We want to control what we're eating and how we're sleeping and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, listen, we're going to go to the Question Command Center with Justin LaVrier. Apparently, there's a question from a good friend. So let's see what that question is.
Yes, indeed. A very good friend of the show and a good friend of yours, Chester, is on the line. And we're going to have another one from Penny Harvey from the UK after that. But our dear friend and co-author of this lovely book, Adrian Gostick, actually writes in. He's a big fan. He says, how does Nicole teach others to be resilient now? And what are some of the ideas that she shares with business teams, especially during this crisis?
Excellent
question. Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, that is an excellent question. And it does go back to this idea of resilience. And I'd like to share, I guess, an example. When I would fly in combat as a flight lead, I would have wingmen who would fly with me, right? Wingmen, depending on the size of the formation. And when we would take off, we never really knew exactly what was going to happen. I never flew a sortie. ever that went exactly the way that we had planned it or briefed it. Because remember, in combat, the enemy has a vote. So there's always going to be something that's unexpected or unknown. And I think that's quite alike what we're going through and teams are going through with this coronavirus crisis. And I remember after we would get all briefed up and get our G suits on and start walking out to the jet, the very last thing I would say to my wingman, and the very thing I would say to the viewers right now, is when in doubt, follow these three things. The first, discipline. The second is focus. And the third is always going to be teamwork. Resilience and how you get through crisis is based on those three things. Discipline means falling back to the fundamentals, the foundational behaviors that got you where you were, the process, the procedures on your teams and in your companies. The second thing is going to be focus. That means literally prioritizing the most important thing and focusing on that as opposed to being distracted by all the noise that's around. So as a team, agreeing on what that focus is, what actually needs to be done on a day-to-day basis. And the third is teamwork. Most important part of teamwork is being so reliable and so trustworthy, beginning with you in the unique role you've been called to do. And then secondarily, allowing your teammates to fulfill the role that they have been called to do. So for me, resilience for companies in crisis is just like flying into combat. Discipline, right? Focus and teamwork.
Excellent. I love that quote. The enemy has a vote. They want to disrupt your perfect plans. And so you've got to be resilient. You've got to be disciplined and so on. Excellent. So there's a question from the UK from Penny.
Yes, indeed there is. So Penny Harvey from the UK says, Nicole, what does it take to really yield? You mentioned yielding earlier, and what are the challenges in doing that in practice?
Mm-hmm. So thanks for that question, Penny. And I have to say, this idea of yield to overcome was especially hard, I think, for somebody with my characteristics and traits. As a fighter pilot, the very characteristics that make us good in the jet can kind of be an Achilles heel in other situations. And for example, I tend to be quite type A, confident, and there's a bit of ego there, which is natural in what we do. So for me, learning to yield to overcome meant setting aside a large portion of my ego, which meant actively setting aside control. And I think that for me, yielding also means asking for help. And I think that in our society still, there's a bit of a stigma, especially for people who are used to doing it all, or teams that are really elite performing, that if we ask for help, we're showing a weakness or a vulnerability. And I think it's now, I've learned the hard way, that the exact opposite is true. So yielding to overcome means taking in the resources around you, asking for and accepting help, which was something that was very difficult for my kind of type A fighter pilot persona to learn.
So fascinating, and now, asking for help. I think right now people are under a lot of stress. They're stressing about their jobs. They're stressing about their kids in school. They're stressing about maybe an elderly parent or someone who's immune compromised. As a fighter pilot, were there some tips on how you dealt with stress as a pilot that could be applicable to how we deal with stress with going through the pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that fighter pilots and people in the military writ large have created, I guess, strengths and skills to deal with stress, because by nature, what we're trained to do, whether it's on the ground or in the air, can certainly be stressful situations. And, combat counts as that. I think some of the best ways to deal with stress is all about the preparation, right? Being prepared and having solidified behaviors and skill sets to muscle memory, so that when you go into a crisis or when those things occur, when you go into combat, you're prepared with behaviors that are muscle memory that you have practiced, right? So that's one way to handle stress, is to be ready. I think the second thing that we would do to handle stress is to mission plan in a way that we thought about all the contingencies. Think like the enemy. Think about where our weak links are. Think ahead so that as soon as you see a contingency, you can make an immediate decision because you already had planned for that. And one of the other things that we would do is chair fly. We called it chair flying. Professional athletes talk about doing this a lot, where they sit back and they close their eyes and they go step by step through what they're about to go execute. Maybe it's a new project, maybe it's something new in your portfolio, maybe it's flying a new mission, but thinking through and chair flying it so that by the time you're actually executing it, it's natural. And then finally, dealing with stress for me, nutrition, sleep, physical fitness, mindfulness. I learned the art of belly breathing as a fighter pilot because when you're breathing in the mask, you can actually hear it in your helmet. And I remember the first time I encountered a situation in combat and I could hear myself breathing really quickly like Darth Vader. And it was a cue to me that said, stop, slow your breathing. And by slowing your breathing, you slow down time in a way that your mind can make the best decisions. So learning the art of strong belly breathing was helpful to me in combat.
Excellent. Belly breathing. Gonna try that. So, obviously the show is Leading with Gratitude Live, right? And as a commander, as you're in your squadron and you saw active duty, how did you use gratitude as a leader, as one of your leadership tools in bringing your team together?
You bet. The greatest honor of my career was commanding the 333rd Fighter Squadron, right? I had an entire group of highly competent, elite performing, type A, patriotic, amazing Americans who were all unique individuals. The step to leading to gratitude, in my opinion, is to tailor your approach to the individual. What is it that makes them tick? What makes them proud of themselves and their families, or what's important to them? A lot of times as leaders, we're short on time. We're not sure we have time to get to know people. And we kind of do this paintbrush, and you think you can lead a group of people on a spectrum, and that's just not the right way. So for example, in a fighter squadron, we have a lot of very high performing people. Some of the gentlemen were very happy. If they earned an award, it was fine if I brought them on stage in front of their peers to elevate them. I knew they were okay with that. I knew they would thrive off of that kind of public recognition. But there were others who would completely shut down if I did that. And I knew it because I'd gotten to know them. So in that situation, I would tailor my gratitude. I would write a handwritten thank you note, and I would place it in their helmet in life support. And when they would go step to fly, they would see a note from their commander, discreetly hide it away from the guys, go fly, and know that they had an attaboy note in there. And that's what made them thrive off of a unique, tailored form of gratitude.
That is awesome. Know your team, right? Know your players.
Absolutely.
So we've got a question from Sweden, all the way from Sweden. Justin?
Yes, Matthew Anderson writes into us from Sweden, a little ways away. I like this. This is a fun question, so I want to throw this in here. Nicole, he says, what's one thing that you really miss about flying and being in service? And what's one thing that you don't miss at all?
Thanks for that question, Matthew. People, when they hear my story, they think you had this amazing career as a fighter pilot with all these fantastic assignments, and I did. And then I was completely broken, and I lost my career because of an unexpected illness. So people say, Nicole, I'm so sorry you can't fly anymore. You must really miss the flying. And the fact of the matter is, I don't miss the flying. I loved the flying. And if you let me do it again today, I would. But what I miss is the people. What I miss is the camaraderie. What I miss was leading airmen and being in a position as a commander to enable and empower them to achieve their own goals, whatever those might be, to be in a place where I could help military families, right? I mean, that was the essence of service in the military, was caring for other people, and that's what I miss. Now, he asked what I don't miss. I do not miss other people owning my schedule. I love the freedom of choosing what I do on any given day with my limited amount of time and my resources. 21 years, 7 months, and 0 days of service. I look back on it fondly, and I'm also just wonderfully thrilled to be where I am in my life right now.
So you don't miss the uniform, you don't miss the slimming effect of the of the parachute that you had to wear?
Boy, Chester, you don't even know how deep that can go. That Thunderbird flight suit is highly tailored. Let's just leave it at that. And between my Thunderbird times and now, I have birthed twins. So I don't miss that show suit. Nope.
Hey, quick story, because we're getting to the bottom of the hour, and this has been so delightful to be with you, Nicole. I knew it would be. Tell me the story. This is my favorite story about thank you for letting me borrow your jet as a wonderful example of teamwork.
Sure. Prior to being a Thunderbird, I had been an operational fighter pilot in 3 regular squadrons. I thought I had an appreciation for the aircraft crew chiefs and for the other people that made it happen. But it wasn't until I joined the Thunderbirds that I think the light bulb came on and I realized what it actually meant to be a mature, fully present teammate. I remember the first time I went out to fly on the Thunderbirds. I'm stepping out to this beautiful red, white, and blue F-16. My heart's pounding with excitement. And I start to do a walk around. You see, previously in the regular Air Force for the prior 10 years, I would always do a walk around. After all, I'm checking the airworthiness of the jet because I'm getting in the jet. And I started to do the walk around, and my 2 Thunderbird crew chiefs, they said, "Ma'am, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm doing a walk around on my jet like I always do." They're like, "Oh, yeah, no, you don't do that here. We do it for you." And I'm thinking, "You're going to do that for me? That's my jet and my life." They said, "Oh, and we're going to pre-flight your life support equipment for you too. Your helmet, your harness, your G-suit, your ejection seat." I'm thinking, I've always been able to do that. And it was hard to let go and allow that level of trust. And as we went through the training season and I watched these 2 guys, the precision, the professionalism, how much they cared, right? How much pride they took in what they did. I finally had this aha moment one day. Dave Batterson climbed up the ladder and he was strapping me into my ejection seat. Pure trust for my life to this guy. And he was always the last person I would talk to before I would hurtle myself through space at 400 miles an hour, 3 feet away from other jets. And he would clasp hands with me and he'd look down and he would always say, "Rock and roll 3." He was telling me, "Have a good flight, number 3. That was my position. And one day I looked at him and it was like the light bulb of teamwork and trust came in. And I said, "Thanks for letting me borrow your jet. Thank you for letting me borrow your jet." I got an entire Air Force career without doing that. The man who spent 23 and a half hours of the day when I wasn't doing the air show, making sure that that was ready to go. And I never flew another sortie the rest of my Air Force career where I didn't tell the crew chief, "Thanks for letting me borrow your jet."
I love that story. I love that story. Okay, so Tony D'Amelio, New York City says, "What achievement are you most proud of in your career?" And you've got 20 seconds. So here we go, Commander. 20 seconds.
Thank you for the question, Tony. I'm grateful for all of the experiences that the Air Force gave me. A lot of times people think it's going to be me saying flying on the Thunderbirds or working in the White House. But the thing I am singularly most proud of is having the privilege and the responsibility and the honor of commanding the 333rd Fighter Squadron.
That is awesome. Well, listen, again, thank you so much for your service. This has been an amazing time with you. Where can we learn more about you and how people can find out more about what you do?
Absolutely. I've got a website. It's NicoleMalachowski.com. NicoleMalachowski.com. You can find me there. And if you have any questions about speaking or any of that, I'm represented by the D'Amelio Network. And thanks a lot for having me, Chester. Y'all and your team were a lot of fun.
You got it. Last question. Where did you find your gratitude today? Hashtag find your gratitude.
I found my gratitude today through my diverse professional network. Yesterday, I was contacted to find a volunteer pilot to do a medical evacuation for a 4-year-old girl who needs to get from a hospital back home to recovery with her family. And in less than 24 hours, my team of pilot friends came through, and we have a volunteer medevac pilot.
Wow. What a great story to end it on. Well, listen, thank you so much. You've been beyond delightful. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time. And you know what? Christy, who is your biggest fan now, who runs my calendar, says, you got to have her back again. You've got to have her back again. So hopefully our paths will cross again soon. Thank you so much, Nicole.
I hope so too, Chester. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it wouldn't be, a show without a commercial. So we've got a quick commercial from our sponsor at Harper Business Books. Can we throw that up real quick? Oh, it's about our book. Alan Mullally said, "I love this book, leadingwithgratitudebook.com. And just a subtle reminder to go ahead and buy the book. Well, listen, this has been great. Our next guest will be David Meltzer. He's the co-founder of Sports One Marketing, one of the most successful sports marketing firms on the planet. He's a consultant. He's a business coach. He's a keynote speaker. He's got 3 best-selling books. He's also been recognized as the Sports Humanitarian of the Year by Variety. He's going to talk to us about game time decision making. He's smart, and he's remarkable, and he's ridiculously charming. I know you'll love it. We have 30 minutes of great information, inspiration, and your own personal roadmap to create your own culture of gratitude at home and at work. All the episodes you can find on methodsof.com, and we've got a new training. This is going to be really fun. It's online training. It's my training session and course on methodsof.com/team management. You can try it online, and there's a lot of other courses there as well. You can find all the past episodes on methodsof.com. Listen, I want to give a shout out to Justin Levere at our Question Command Center. He did a great job. Wave to the crowd there in your ninja outfit. And as always, the best online producer of all time, Brent Klein with his orange beanie, living the brand. Love it, love it, love it. Well, listen, we're here every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, be grateful, be kind, be patient. I'm grateful for our time together. Take care. I'm out. Cheers. Well, I hope you enjoyed our podcast. I hope that you'll give it a like on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcast. I hope you'll follow me on LinkedIn. More than that, I hope you'll pick up a copy of Leading with Gratitude. You know, there's a whole roadmap in there for a better life at work and at home. Tips on how to do it, when to do it, and how to take it home. So I hope you'll enjoy the book. I hope you'll come back and enjoy the podcast. And I hope you'll share your gratitude with someone today. That's my hope. See you again soon, I hope. Have a grateful day. Cheers.